I call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Good evening, and welcome to the Planning Commission of the City of Moreno Valley. I now call this meeting to order on May 9th, 2024 at 6 p.m. May we now have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Taylor,
Here.
Commissioner Terrell,
Here.
Commissioner Stefan is excused, Commissioner Cobian,
Here.
Commissioner Dejanay,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Baker,
Here.
Chairperson Gonzalez.
Here. Would like to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll have Alvin do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Put your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States Republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are now going to move approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Move that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
We have motion by Commissioner Baker and a second by Commissioner Cobian. Can we please start the vote? The motion carries 6-0.
We'll do a verbal vote as well, thank you. Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cobian,
Yes.
Commissioner Dejanay,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Baker,
Yes.
Chairperson Gonzalez.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. The motion carries. Public comments procedure. Before we hear public comments this evening, I ask and encourage everyone participating to keep their comments respectful towards others, especially towards the individual speaking. I embrace and support the First Amendment right to free speech, including everyone's right to speak at this meeting and share his or her views about issues concerning our city. We can accomplish more as a city and as private citizens by being civil and respectful toward one another in this meeting. During the public comment period for each item, as well as during the public comment period for items not on the agenda, each member of the public who has signed up to speak will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Any person wishing to address the commission on any matter, either under the public comment section of the agenda or scheduled items or public hearings, must fill out a request to speak form available at the door. The completed form must be submitted to the secretary prior to the agenda item being called by the chairperson. In speaking to the commission, members of the public may be limited to 3 minutes per person, except for the applicant for entitlement. The commission may establish an overall time limit for comments on a particular agenda item. Members of the public must direct their questions to the chairperson of the commission and not to other members of the commission, the applicant, the staff, or the audience. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Now we move into public comments on items not on the agenda. Are there any speakers for items not on the agenda?
Yes, we have one. Bob Palomares.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bob Palomares, and what I speak of is of my own opinion. And first of all, I want to congratulate Ms. Taylor there. I hope it's permanent. And I seen when you got appointed, or they recommended you for the seat, your resume. Wow, I said that's exactly what we need. Someone with her professionalism. So I'm glad to see you up there. And I have a great deal of respect for all of you because I watch the commissions. I don't come here, but I watch them on TV and use a lot of wisdom and professionalism. And you're calm, The city council, I couldn't compare it to the way the planning commission runs. And you guys dissect everything that's before you, and you make, in my opinion, for the most part, great decisions, and that's great. And I just want to also say that we all know that there's a vacant council seat, and we don't know who's going to run or who's going to be coming up. But I would say personally that I would caution anyone that would run for that seat, because in the past, we have had people, 5 people, pressuring council members, you know, for projects to either deny them or approve them. And, you know, that's wrong, because 10 people should never speak for 215,000 or whatever the number of residents are, based on what they don't want or what they do want. It should be up to you to look at the entire picture, because it does happen. And hopefully, if I get everything put together at the next Planning Commission meeting, I'm going to bring you information on the former councilman of District 3 over the years, and I've got it documented of what he has committed. And you probably know some of it, but you'll be surprised at a whole lot of it, and it's all factual. I'm not going to come up here and spin things and make false accusations or slander or mislead. These are all factual. So thank you and good evening.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. At this time, we have no items. The next item on the agenda is the non-public hearing items. At this time, we have no items. Public hearing items. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing items. Item number 1, the City of Moreno Valley requests approval of Municipal Code Amendment PEN 24-0033, revising amendments to Title IX. Can we please have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the council. Robert Flores, planning official here with the city. Typically, I hand this off to one of our planners to make the presentation, but tonight I will have a brief presentation for you myself. Before you today is the 2024 Spring Omnibus Municipal Code Update for Title IX, which is our land use and zoning section. This amendment includes many changes, mainly intended to address a lot of the recent legislation that has come down from the state, and also to provide for some cleanup items within our code, as shown in the staff report. Some of the items that I do want to highlight real quickly is we are amending or proposing amendments to our ADU section or ADU program, and that is to ensure that it's consistent with state ADU law. We are also addressing film studios in our ordinance with this amendment, and we are also addressing public benefit provisions within some of our sections in the code. With that, staff recommends a motion for adoption of the resolution that's presented before you to move this item forward to the City Council for consideration. That concludes my report. I am available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Are there any commissioner questions for staff?
Here, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, what are the effects of adopting the AB 1287, SB 7113 in our density bonus program for affordable housing? Will that help get more increased affordable housing in the community? Will it encourage more developers to do it? And what is the, I guess when it says the 100%, can you explain that?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Otero. So the legislation that you mentioned are two pieces of legislation that were recently passed in order to modify the state's density bonus law. What we're doing is we're incorporating that into our ordinance. We do have a section in our ordinance that addresses density bonus. What density bonus is essentially a tool to assist in not only housing production, but also affordable housing production particularly. What it does is that if a developer provides more affordable housing, they not only are allowed to increase the density to get more units on for the development, but they're also allowed to request some concessions and some modifications of specific standards. What we're doing here today, or what's before you, is a modification because the state now allows more concessions and incentives, which are deviations from our standards, with developments that are 100% affordable. So if it's a completely affordable housing project, you get more concessions than those that are not full affordable housing. And to address your question as far as if it'll help with increasing more housing production, specifically affordability, it's a tool. So yes, it's intended and it was adopted by the state and is also adopted in our code to help with our housing production. It's yet to be seen when development comes in to see if it helps, but it is a tool to do that.
I have another question, Mr. Chair. The other question is, the amendment, one of the amendments I see, it says approve under, it says, it shall terminate 12 months following the approval. I guess that provision refers to if a developer gets the entitlement for the general plan amendment and specific plan, if they have to get on the ball within 12 months or they'll lose their entitlement. Is that what I'm reading into?
Commissioner Otero, I will hand it over to our city attorney to answer that question for you.
Thank you. Essentially, yes, that's correct. They'd have 1 year to act on it, and failure to do so, absent them taking certain steps which might, under the law, give them a vested right to continue, that entitlement would expire.
So that means they would have to get into either a development agreement or into a Pacific plan? Is that, that sets timeframes?
Yes, so if they don't take certain actions and certain steps towards actually constructing the project, it would expire absent them entering into a development agreement, which would then provide for an extended period of time, which would be mutually negotiated between you all, the city council, and the applicant. And that can be extended to, one of the benefits of a development agreement is it's a contract that's not subject to the standard rules that the city's otherwise tied to. And that could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever you wanted it to be. But absent that, they have 1 year.
And so once they lose it, then they would have to come back to they have to go through the whole process again. They have to start all over again, right?
Correct, essentially.
Okay. And one more question. Where I saw a provision in there that cleanup that says if something to be appealed, it takes now 2 council members, or will it take? It says 2 council members. So why did we change from 1 to 2?
I can't answer necessarily why, because I unfortunately wasn't the person who worked on it, and I don't know if staff can answer the why. I could answer maybe the effects, but not the why.
Okay.
I actually, what I can say is that currently it requires at least one council member, and we are changing to 2 council members. The only thing I could say is that it just provides for some consensus on the direction moving forward in the council. But other than that, there's no clear additional information that I can provide.
And to add to that, I would say, as I alluded to, one of the potential effects of it would be where currently 1 council member could appeal. As you know, the council speaks by majority vote. So sometimes it's more efficient for legislative bodies to have something like this so that 1 council member, whoever it may be, isn't putting something on agenda that might not have enough support to actually really gender enough debate. And so when you have 2, it might be potentially more meaningful and efficient for the council for it to actually be in front of the council. So that's one potential effect.
Okay. In the streamlining ministerial process for parcels, now what will be the effect of that taking place? Having that streamline the ministerial process for parcels?
Yes.
What would be the effect of that?
So that's, again, another piece of legislation that came down from the state, a change that we're implementing. What it is that it's a new streamlined process for subdivisions. Subdivisions are either parcel maps or tract maps, but it's for specific developments. It's for smaller subdivisions, 10 lots or less, smaller developments that would result with less units. They're intended to be processed efficiently within 60 days. So we're just adapting what the state law now allows or requires into our code.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think you said that perfectly. But to add to that, essentially, it is sort of state mandated, so it's just a way for our code to comply with what we're otherwise required to. And the intent being, at least according to the legislator, is to encourage the construction of housing. And so it removes some barriers that otherwise might exist prior to that legislation to help certain kinds of developments which might stimulate housing.
Oh, okay.
I have a question. Does this would this affect in single-family zones that are more geared to urban lot splits? Any streamlining there, or it's just in multifamily zones?
This is actually applicable in single-family homes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is for parcel maps and tract maps that are 10 lots or less. Just with that density, it could be applicable in single-family homes. But it's not, so it's affecting the process. So whereas a normal parcel map or tract map takes a specific amount of time for processing, what the state has said is that for these types of development that qualify, that meet certain requirements, shall be processed by the city in a more streamlined manner. So it's more the processing that it's working on, and it's subdividing the lots still have to be consistent with what the state criteria is and the zone that they're in.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Within that same language, I saw something that said, failure of the planning commission to report within 45 days, then it becomes a recommendation. Is that, I mean, who's the governing body for the reporting process from the planning commission to make that report within 45 days?
If I understand the question correctly, first, I do believe, and correct me if I'm incorrect, that was in the statute as well, and it's to help encourage instances where the planning commission, I believe the intent is to encourage instances where the planning commission might not act quickly enough. It's not a way to stall a project, and so it's essentially deemed recommended. So it would be incumbent upon staff, I suppose, to ensure when applications come, it comes before you within a certain period of time so that you could make said recommendation. Absent that, the statute says it's essentially deemed recommended so that it doesn't get stalled in the process.
And I just add to that, it is going to be staff's responsibility to accept the application and bring it forward within the timeframes that are established now, that will be established if this ordinance is adopted in our code, but are part of state law. But the legislation specifically states that it's the time starts once an application is deemed complete, and that process can be several months. Can be several, even longer, depending on the different projects. So once an application is deemed complete and the city has everything that we need to process the project, that's when our time starts, and we have to get it to the planning commission in time for an action.
I see.
And just for whatever it's worth, there are other pieces of legislation, not necessarily here, but that the city's already bound to that has similar timelines. So it's not necessarily a completely new concept, but it is obviously specifically called out here, which is, again, just incorporating the statute requirement. But it does exist in other land use applications as well for certain kinds of entitlements.
It's just the way that it read, with the failure of the planning commission, I thought that it would be a failure on our part, just this governing board to make that report within 45 days.
Yeah, it doesn't suggest specifically your failure to do something you should have done and didn't do negligently, for instance. It would just be, again, it's just to ensure that the timeline is moving forward with respect to processing the application.
Any other questions?
One more,
more?
Chairman?
Okay.
Public benefit. I saw that throughout. Okay, so explain that provision to the public benefit part of it. where it says, Monsieur, it says will provide a public benefit to the community beyond those that may be unilaterally imposed by the city through traditional. Explain what that meant by that.
Sure. The provision I believe you're talking about is the proposed provision within our general plan section, general plan amendment section, change of zone section, and specific plan amendment section. What that basically says is that when we receive an application for these types of actions, which are legislative actions that ultimately get recommended by the Planning Commission and heard and determined by the City Council, they must include some type of public benefit to the community, and it needs to be clearly explained and elaborated, and it needs the findings that are required to approve that type of action must include findings that indicate what that benefit is.
It's let me think. So because it says here unilateral. So the city says the public, the community beyond those that may be unilateral imposed by the city. So the city imposed something that they have to. The developer has to propose something more public benefits other than what the city imposed on them. If they decide they didn't want to do anything, and the city says you have to do this, but they have to do this if they want to have this general plan amendment and zone change. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Keep in mind when this body often hears applications for development, conditional use permits, track maps, other subdivisions, plot plans, things of that nature. There's already exactions that come along with that type of application and that development in order for that project to be approved. Some examples of that are fees, impact fees, mitigation fees. There's dedications. There's infrastructure improvements that are necessary for that project or that project induces. Those are the normal exactions that the section is speaking about. What is being added is an additional, like you said, above and beyond that, the normal community benefit that will be connected and tied to these types of actions that are being requested.
So when we see the conditional use, what is it called, the condition of approval, that's what you're referring to about the things when we read in our reports, the conditions of approval, when they have like the infrastructure improvement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the public benefit part of it in our conditional of approval. But what you're saying is, other than what we say you have to do, is like you say, it could be anything that the city council deemed as a public benefit to the community. So that's okay.
Yes, so typically, most if not all the conditions of approval can be exactions that are tied to the project, have a nexus to that. But this would be above and beyond. It would also become possibly a condition of approval, but it will be something that would normally not be a part of the normal process.
And to add to that, where they decide they'd like to enter into a development agreement, that would probably be accomplished and set forth in the development agreement as well. So it might not always be found in a condition of approval, it could, but if it's a development agreement, it would be set forth in the development agreement what they've agreed to provide in the form of a public benefit.
Because the reason I asked that, because I remember some developers, they present public benefits on a piece of paper, in part of a report. But I remember some council meetings that the individual say, I think it was a council member or one of our electeds, would say something like, "Can we moralize?" So does that take away? Have to going through the moralization and have a policy that says you have to, not moralization of it, I guess?
It would still be memorialized. It would just be handled slightly different than it probably was in the past because it wasn't codified in the municipal code, but it would be done through some sort of enforceable condition of approval agreement. In some nature, it would be done in an enforceable memorialization, but it would be a different process than before, where it was sort of presented like, hey, the developer is going to offer this to you. It'll here be sort of actually tied to the project based off of this code.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will now open the public hearing at 6:24 p.m. and hear public testimony. The clerk will call upon each person who has requested to speak. Each member of the public wishing to speak will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak on the public hearing item. Do we have any speakers?
No speakers.
At this time, would like staff to provide any additional information? Oh. Okay. It looks like they're. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, can you repeat that question?
Yes, if at this time would staff like to provide any additional information?
Yes, if you would just give us a few minutes to have some discussions, there may be something I may bring to the commission before action.
Okay, thank you. Are you ready, Robert? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. We noticed a discrepancy in our documents, so we wanted to make sure that we bring that before you make your decision. I'll just make a quick note that the staff report in regards to the section that's adding the new streamlined process for parcel maps and tract maps in accordance to state legislation, the staff report has the wrong section number, but the resolution has the correct section number, and the attached proposed ordinance does have the correct section number. Just want to provide that for your information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have to note that in our when we approve it or not?
No, it's fine. You can just approve the resolution as is.
Okay, thank you. Okay. At this time, if there are no more speakers for the public testimony, then we will close the public testimony at 6:28 p.m. and move on to deliberations or a motion and second on the item. Okay. Do we have a motion and a second to accept staff recommendations?
I'll move that we approve Resolution 2024-22 and thereby recommend to the City Council and also find the proposed amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, and then also introduce a adopt the proposed ordinance to effect the various amendments in Title IX, Planning and Zoning of Moreno Valley Municipal Code based on the findings set forth and/or reference in Resolution 2024-22.
I'll second that.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Baker and a second by Commissioner Desjardins. Can we please start the vote?
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Cobian,
Yes.
Commissioner Desjardins,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Baker,
Yes.
Chairperson Gonzalez.
Yes. The motion carries 6-0. Can we have please a staff wrap up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This item will be taken, move forward to the City Council for consideration.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is other commission business. At this time, we have no items. Next item on the agenda is staff comments. Do we have any comments from staff at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just real quickly, I do want to mention if anybody's here, there are applications in the back for the Emerging Leaders Council. So if there's any interest, we have those applications back there, which I announced the last meeting. And also the piece of legislation that was brought forth the other meeting, the past meeting, will be brought forward in a future meeting. So we're still working on that. Just want to make sure I informed you of that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is planning commissioner comments. Do we have any commissioner comments at this time? Okay, seeing none. Planning commission meeting is adjourned at 6:31 p.m. to our regular scheduled meeting on May 23rd at 6 p.m. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.